Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Sony Animation is a studio that's pretty difficult to sum up. They're all over the place in terms of creative intention, target appeal, and art style. They don't even seem to have their own mascot, which isn't a bad thing, it just adds to that vagueness of their identity. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my personal choices for the top 5 best and worst Sony Animation films. First of all, the one rule is they just have to have the Sony Animation bumper at the beginning of the film. Just because an animated film was distributed by Sony doesn't mean that their animation studio worked on it. I'm also not going to be counting any of their straight-to-video films, just the theatrical ones. If a film that you like is in the worst list, or a film you dislike is in the best list, that's totally fine, all power to you. You're completely welcome to disagree, just try to keep it civil in the comments section, okay? This is just a fun retrospective on a studio's filmography, a studio that I have no ill will against and wish the best for. With all that being said, let's begin! Starting with my worst list. Number 5. The Star. Bo is a donkey stuck working in a mill but wishes that he could serve the royal cavalry and feel more important. He manages to escape to freedom but ends up getting caught between Joseph and Mary's ride to Bethlehem, where Mary must give birth to Christ. Bo agrees to help carry Mary to her destination, but the evil King Herod has sent an assassin to kill Mary, with help from his 2 loyal dogs. Bo must protect Mary, with support from a dove called Dave and a sheep called Ruth. Now, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against the idea of a version of the nativity story that focuses on the animals. It's a cute concept, but it's the execution where things fall. The problem is that all these talking animals aren't exactly well-written characters. They're all unfunny, forgettable, and obnoxiously won't shut up.
There's nothing to fear, Zach. It's all a figment of your imagination. This really realistic version of a donkey who's talking to God and won't stop eyeballing you.
Zach!
Huh?
Pull yourself together.
Ow.
What's your name, sweetie?
Bo?
Bo is a funny word. Bo. Bo.
What? He has a name?
Bo.
And she's singing him a song?
I'm doomed.
There's nothing smart or creative about the comedy, it's just lots of rambling and animals falling over. The easiest way to make kids laugh, and not exactly the kind of humour that respects children's intelligence. For the most part, it's pretty unnecessary that any of the animals talk at all. They didn't need to have dialogue. But it's more than obvious that Sony Animation only wanted to make these animals talk so that the trailer would have lots of celebrity names to show off, putting commercial marketing before what's best for the film. It's also clear that the filmmakers didn't have enough confidence in kids' attention spans, so they used the constant dialogue as a crutch, nervous that children will lose interest the moment an animal goes quiet.
Yeah, I'm caught again. There's gotta be a better hiding place. Okay, maybe not here. Nope, not that one either. Why couldn't I be smaller?
The animal's perspective isn't even an imaginative one. Bo's plot is the overdone, I want more to this boring, unhappy life, only to find something grounded while on an adventure. The same plotline for nearly every single 90s Disney movie. It's far from a refreshingly original idea for an animated character's arc. What frustrates me more than anything though, is that the tale of Mary and Joseph, which ends up being more of a background plot, is pulled off amazingly. The movie approaches their burden of becoming the parents of Christ so well.
I can't raise the son of God. He's a king. I'm just a carpenter. He needs someone with a little more experience being, I don't know, kingish?
These scenes are handled with so much profound maturity that I wish that they were the main focus.
This is hard. Trust me, I know it is. Just because God has a plan doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And that scares me.
The Prince of Egypt, Joseph King of Dreams, and The Miracle Maker have proved that you can make serious biblical dramas for kids. It's not an impossible task that's never been tried before. The Star didn't need to have talking animals to keep children engaged. Mary and Joseph's story could have been enough to entertain them. It's that well written. I think that The Star is average at best and missed potential at worst. Number 4. Peter Rabbit. When a man called Thomas inherits his relative's home, he decides to turn it into a toy shop. But the local animals, led by the cheeky Peter Rabbit, feel entitled to be in his house and begin tormenting Thomas into leaving. This film is based on the work of author/illustrator Beatrix Potter, but any fan of her stories would tell you that this movie is a name-only adaptation, because it's far more anarchic and over the top than Potter's subtle, quiet stories. I get that this is a Peter Rabbit for a new generation, and I have nothing against rebooting something from my childhood for modern kids, but that doesn't mean that I have to approve of this new take on Peter, especially when the end result is a bad example of introducing Potter's work to today's kids. It's like Sony Animation were interested in the brand name appeal of Peter Rabbit, but weren't confident enough to capture the nuances of Beatrix Potter's work. So they played it safe and did something more like Hop instead. While Thomas is far from a nice guy and not an innocent man in all this, Peter's relentless determination to invade Thomas's home, which he owns fair and square, and fan the flames of Thomas's mental breakdown, makes Peter come across as a sociopathic bully and the biggest instigator in the fight. I feel way more sorry for Thomas, who's supposed to be the antagonist, and he's kind of a dick himself. Sure, Peter does eventually feel bad for making Thomas suffer, but this apology doesn't happen until much later into the film. He only suddenly has a conscience because the story calls for it, and it's not like the film always framed Peter's monstrous behavior as bad. For the most part, it asks us to laugh at Thomas's pain and torture, wanting us to cheer Peter on. These slapstick attacks are actually more mean-spirited than funny too, going as far as having Peter and his friends attempting to kill Thomas by triggering his blueberry allergy. Allergy bullying is a real problem in children's schools, so normalizing it as funny is pretty harmful for a kids movie. But at least Sony apologized for this later on. Even after Peter apologizes, he's clearly not learned a lesson, because following his apology, he starts bullying a couple who have bought Thomas's house. These two may not be friendly or nice, but this is now their legal property. They don't deserve to be tormented just because Thomas changed his mind about selling it, and this is all just proof that Peter hasn't grown or matured, that he wasn't sorry for being a bully. The comedy is also really repetitive, with the movie relying on repeating the same 5 jokes over and over again, thinking that their young audience is too dumb to notice a lazy pattern. Peter himself has nothing funny to say, he just rambles on in a desperate hope that one of his bad jokes lands.
Lettuce, radishes, radicchio. I'll tell you what's radicchio, how easy it is to steal this man's vegetables. Because radicchio sounds like ridiculous.
Don't explain the joke.
The realistic animation may be impressively detailed, but it's not exactly the best animation style for such a cartoony film, making the physical comedy and goofy character expressions look more creepily uncanny valley than hilariously funny. On top of all this, the movie has an insulting habit of making characters explain their motivations to the audience. Like it thinks that kids are too stupid to read characters' intentions or feelings.
You think I've got some kind of ulterior motive, that I'm harboring some kind of emotional connection to her because of losing my own mother and father, and I think if she goes, what have I got? It's only about the garden and I don't know what's happened to my voice.
Do you really think this little of your audience, movie? I've only scratched the surface of what I don't like about this film, so feel free to check out my actual review of it, which goes into more detail about my many issues. I know that some people liked this film, and all power to you if you enjoyed it, but I think it's an insincere and passive-aggressive film that shamelessly disrespects Beatrix Potter's legacy. Number 3. The Smurfs 2. In this sequel to The Smurfs, it's Smurfette's birthday, but none of the Smurfs seem to be saying anything. So Smurfette feels unloved and ignored, but really, the Smurfs are just trying to keep her party a secret. Meanwhile, Gargamel is now a famous celebrity sorcerer in France, but he needs more Smurf essence for his act. So, with help from his own evil Smurfs, Vexy and Hackers, he kidnaps Smurfette from Smurf Village and tries to get her to tell him Papa Smurf's secret formula for creating Smurfs. Forcing her to answer doesn't seem to be getting them anywhere, so they try to get on her good side by manipulating her into feeling like they're her real family. Really, there's not too much difference between this sequel and the first Smurfs film. The Smurfs are still annoying and creepy looking, plus it's yet another Smurfs film about them being tossed into our world. Patrick's plotline is just as generic this time too, now being about the cliche stepson can't get along with his stepfather because he's not his real dad. It's really hard to sympathise with Patrick's stepdad Victor too, because when we first meet him, he ends up triggering a child's peanut allergy and has no remorse for the kid's allergic reaction.
Well, That's why they overreacted.
They didn't overreact.
He's dying!
Oh, what a charming man. So unfair that his son is ashamed of him, right? One of the main reasons Patrick doesn't like his stepdad, though, is because apparently Victor got rid of his childhood pet parrot. Victor later confesses that the parrot was given away because Patrick had an allergy to birds, and Victor didn't want Patrick to assume that his biological dad took the parrot with him. This is framed as some kind of noble gesture, when it really isn't. It's terrible step-parenting because he lied to Patrick. Now, Patrick has spent most of his life being naive to an allergy and developed confusing feelings about his stepfather. All Victor had to say was, your dad didn't take the parrot away. No, you just have an allergy to birds. That's all. Simple as. Victor taking the blame wasn't some kind of selfless sacrifice. It was just dumb. However, what makes this Smurfs film a tiny bit better than the first movie is that it does try to add a little edge to its story. By playing around with the idea of Smurfette considering joining the dark side, making her wonder if she belongs with her creator Gargamel. It's mainly an excuse for Smurfette, Hackers and Vexy to goof about around Paris, but the idea is more of a risk take than anything that the first film offers. Number 2. The Smurfs. The Smurfs are tiny blue creatures who live happily in their peaceful village until the evil wizard Gargamel tracks them down. The Smurfs try to run away from Gargamel, only to end up having to jump into a portal, and Gargamel follows them behind. This portal takes the Smurfs to New York City, where they meet Marketing Vice President Patrick Winslow and his wife Grace, who are planning to have a baby. The Smurfs request Patrick's help as they need to find a way back home before Gargamel finds them in New York. But Patrick is more focused on an upcoming marketing campaign for his boss. It's clear that the filmmakers behind this movie didn't have enough faith in adapting the Smurfs into a feature film, because they decided to go with the cliche-safe route of tossing licensed fantastical characters into an American city. It's the usual template Hollywood uses when they don't know how to turn a popular cartoon character into a movie. It saves lots of money and is easier than being creative. To make things even more unoriginal, the Smurfs are being thrown into the middle of yet another story about a workaholic family man, who is being guilted by the movie for putting his work first. Even his wife tells him that the Smurfs are more important than his job.
Really sorry about your job, okay? And I hope that you can straighten that out, but you are so not seeing the big picture here. I mean, look around, look what's happening right now. Of all the people on the planet, those magical little creatures came to us. They chose us. Don't you see how absolutely amazing that is?
If Patrick gets fired, you won't be able to afford food and rent for your family, so his job is way more important than the Smurfs. Nothing much even happens in the film. The Smurfs just fart about around New York City, sometimes taking their quest seriously, but most of the time goofing off and doing the usual predictable "these alien creatures don't understand human things" joke. Not to mention, I found the animation to be quite charmless and annoying. The realistic rendering creates a creepy, uncanny valley vibe to the Smurfs' designs, and every Smurf is constantly moving around like they're on Red Bull or talking non-stop.
Mumsy, where the Smurf are you?
Grace! Run!
Stop bleeding like a sheep and let the hogs eye you wriggly numpty.
Grace!
As if the filmmakers don't think kids have any patience and that they have to patronizingly distract them with loud noises and busy visuals. Anyone can keep kids' attention through constant movement and dialogue. It's not the only way to entertain kids. Heck, it's the most insulting and lazy way to entertain kids, because it underestimates them. Great film storytelling successfully engages children while also believing that they are smart and patient enough to be visually challenged by something nuanced. To top all these problems off, the film is disgustingly always trying to find excuses to advertise toys and candy, making it even more obvious that the movie doesn't respect the children watching it and just wants them to spend money. That's really insincere and kind of gross. The Smurfs is a cynical cash grab of a film, clearly only designed to make money. There was no love behind it, and children deserve so much better than what it offers. Although Hank Azaria does a fantastic job bringing Gargamel to life in live action. He really is the original cartoon character in the flesh.
Just a tiny little bit of your little tiny beard gives me all of this essence. Just imagine what I'll be able to harvest from your entire family of Smurfs. Alakazooka!
It's just a shame that the movie doesn't know what to do with Gargamel. Number 1. The Emoji Movie. Inside a smartphone belonging to a teenage boy called Alex is the world of Textopolis, where emojis have to serve the purpose of making one expression. One emoji, Gene, is a meh. Bertie struggles to commit to his deadpan emotion. He would rather do lots of different ones. One day, Gene is clicked for a text. He freaks out in a panic and does a dozen expressions at once. This makes Alex think that his smartphone is broken, so he books an appointment to have it reset. Smiler, the leader of Textopolis, decides to send robots to delete Gene. With help from a hacker called Jailbreak and a high-five emoji, Gene must find a way to switch his emotions off so he can stick to being a meh. But along the way, he realizes that being able to express lots of emotions is a good thing. Okay, so I have nothing against emojis. They're harmless stickers that make texting fun, but I really can't say that they deserve their own movie. They're not universally cherished and haven't stood the test of time. They're only relevant to the now and will fade into obscurity as technology advances. While the Lego Movie did prove that you can turn a corporate property into a good film, Lego had the advantage of being a toy legacy that's being passed down from generation to generation. Emojis don't have that same level of cultural longevity, and Sony Animation clearly only decided to make a film about them because smartphones are a popular obsession nowadays. What could have been a critique on technology fatigue and our obsession with gluing our faces to screens ends up being an 85-minute bombardment of smartphone product placements and a cynical celebration of our dependence on phones. Apparently, the director denies that companies paid Sony Animation to include their products, but it's still sickening to see every world in this universe resembling a literal advert. It's the complete opposite of being imaginative. These aren't creative settings, they're showcases for what certain smartphone apps can do for their users. While Be Yourself is a decent message for a kids film, it's not exactly an inspired or new one, and teaching it in a world where self-expression can put your entire community into apocalyptic danger wasn't the smartest storytelling decision. None of the characters are likable or well-developed either. Gene is a typical outcast who wants to fit in, only remarkable because he can change his face. High Five is an obnoxious loudmouth comic relief who is more rude and gross than funny.
Hey, can I come too?
Talk to the hand, Red Wagon.
I thought I was.
And Jailbreak is only defined by her need for independence. The comedy is also lackluster, with the film always going for the easiest and most obvious jokes, instead of finding unique ways to provide humor.
We all have accidents.
You're so soft, Poop.
Not too soft, I hope.
When I saw this film at the cinema, none of the kids watching it at the screening laughed. Not once. And they're the target audience. The Emoji Movie is everything that's wrong with Hollywood and their shameless need to cash in on whatever is trending. Without a doubt, I think it's the worst film ever made by Sony Animation and their biggest low point as a studio. So, those are my choices for the worst Sony Animation movies. Before we move on, I'd just like to point out that I'm going to be a guest at the convention JCon this September. I'll be talking about the legacy of puppet filmmaker Jim Henson. If you're interested in seeing this panel and meeting me after, then head over to the JCon website to get your tickets now. Anyway, now it's time to talk about my choices for the best Sony Animation movies. Number 5. Surf's Up. Cody is a young penguin who dreams of becoming a surfer, but his community frowns upon the idea. One day he gets the chance to enter a surfing competition, but realizes that he's not as good as he thought he was. While at the contest, Cody ends up meeting a mysterious islander called Geek, who turns out to be Cody's biggest hero, the legendary surfer Big Z. And Z reluctantly agrees to coach Cody to surf better. I'll be the first to admit that Surf's Up isn't that remarkable in terms of story. It's kind of sort of the Karate Kid but with surfing penguins. However, what makes it unique is its documentary-style filmmaking. While the overall designs are clearly cartoony, the direction is surprisingly slow-paced and organically natural. framed with an observational realism that Hollywood animation rarely goes for. Rather than trying to be as busy and loud as possible to keep kids' attention, it goes for something more composed, steady, and self-controlled. I'm amazed that Sony Animation took a huge risk like this, believing that kids would have the patience to sit through a documentary format for an animated movie. I really respect that confidence. While it does sometimes rely a bit too much on lowbrow toilet humor.
Oh, come on now.
Geek, stop.
Let's do this. Lonnie, can you make some water sounds?
Oh my gosh, this is so gross.
Oh, no, you...
It's still a charmingly laid-back film that asks audiences to relax into their seats, take in the atmosphere of this peaceful, beautiful island, and carefully observe the moments that the filmmakers are lingering their cameras on. It's also got a decent message about surfing values. The first and foremost, it's about enjoying the art of the sport and experiencing it with people who love it just as much as you. The character of Chicken Joe, who I love by the way, exemplifies this notion entirely, without even trying. Approaching the competition with a go-with-the-flow attitude that helps him to be more confident in the process, but not to the point where he lets winning go to his head.
How's it feel to win, Joe?
I won?
Surf's Up isn't as amazing as some of the other films on my best list, but it is one of the stronger efforts from Sony Animation, and I have to commend the few creative risks that it does take. Number 4. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. On the island of Swallow Falls, which is best known for its sardine exports, lives Flint Lockwood, an eccentric scientist who spends most of his time in his lab. But his countless inventions always fail to succeed. One day though, he creates a machine that turns food into weather, and it starts raining hamburgers. The mayor uses Flint's invention to draw in tourists, urging Flint to keep making it rain food. While news intern Sam Sparks reports on all this weather action in a bid to become a professional meteorologist. However, Flint's invention is starting to overload. Can it handle all of its requests? I know some people strongly dislike this film, mainly because it changes so much from the book, but I've not read the book personally, so I don't have anything to compare it to. Now, many years ago, I actually put this film on my top 10 favorite films list, and while I wouldn't include it in that list nowadays, I still really like it. Writers/directors Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who would go on to make very successful comedy films, show their comedic chops here with rapid-fire jokes that always make me laugh.
Sam Sparks.
Hang it up! Regretting, recycling, seeing what I'm doing?
Flint?
Hi, Sam, how are you? That's nice. I was wondering if you would like to go on a activity with me tomorrow.
Okay.
Great, bye. Meet me in the forest!
But I also love the character relationships. Flint and his father have a complicated relationship due to their drastically different life passions, but his dad consistently tries to support and connect to Flint. He just struggles to express his love, not because he's a bad dad, but he's just very shy. It's kind of adorable. The only time he's genuinely ashamed of Flint is when Flint ends up destroying the town with his invention, a very understandable reason to be disappointed. He does disapprove of the weather machine, but only because it doesn't seem natural, and he turns out to be right about his feelings. All other times, he's doing everything he can to be there for his son, just wanting him to be happy, even if he doesn't understand Flint's passion for science and his advice mainly consists of fishing metaphors. While Flint's romance with Sam is pretty adorable, these two bond purely through their love of science and mutual experiences of being nerds, each bringing something great out of the other, with Sam encouraging Flint to adapt to the world outside his lab, and Flint showing Sam that she's at her most beautiful when she's just being herself. The animation is very fast-paced, but I feel as if this fits the rhythm of the film, from the succession of funny back-and-forth comedic dialogue to the energetic enthusiasm of Flint's inventing sequences. Yeah, it can get a little over the top sometimes, but this wild energy is often backed with a string of witty jokes to justify the pace.
Engage coffee break.
The movie is at its most exciting when the weather machine goes ballistic, leading to the fantastic visual of a spaghetti and meatballs tornado, and an imaginative adventure through the mutated food world created by the machine. So what made me decide to no longer include it on my top 10 favourite films list? Well, when it boils down to it, Cloudy has a very cliche rags to riches story, a common template for comedies. An eccentric character discovers or invents something amazing, an authority figure takes advantage of its benefits, and the success goes to the lead character's head, resulting in them losing the support of their love interest. Yeah, I've come to realize how predictable the film really is. But despite that, I still think it's a lot of fun and always enjoy watching it. Number 3. Pirates in an adventure with scientists. In this collaboration with Aardman, a pirate captain becomes determined to win Pirate of the Year, even though he's not a very good pirate and his crew isn't exactly the smartest or most ruthless bunch. After trying to plunder the ship of scientist Charles Darwin, pirate captain learns from Charles that his pet parrot Polly is really a dodo. So with help from Charles, the pirate captain enters Polly into a science contest in London, in hopes that he'll get a big cash reward. But tension rises when Queen Victoria herself takes a shining to Polly. Why? Well, it turns out that she wants to cook the poor dodo for a banquet. The strength of this film is its ability to make us sympathize with pirates of all people. Only Aardman can make rapscallions of the sea seem endearing. At the heart of this movie is a sense of loving camaraderie between a ragtag group of failed pirates, who may not have all the treasure in the world, but love each other like a family. We become so charmed by these rubbish pirates that we wish that they could become successful. We want the pirate captain to win his award. Seeing as our heroes are pirates, it must have been tricky to come up with an antagonist for them. Well, Queen Victoria makes for a menacingly sinister villain, with her manic personality and relentlessness to get Polly. She's so horrible and spiteful that she makes our pirates look like the most wholesome people ever. But most of all, this is just a very, very, very funny movie, with one witty joke snapping after another. The film fires its comedic ammo with ease, keeping us laughing consistently and very rarely missing the mark.
Hello, Your Majesty. The dodo is coming. Tout de suite.
This really isn't wise. Oh.
Claudette. But you know, Your Majesty, you cannot hurry the cooking.
It's a very delicate recipe, huh?
And the dodo is a very fattening dish. Perhaps it's not so good for you. And you know the calories, they will go straight to your chubby sides.
It also features the amazing Brian Blessed as the Pirate King, the most perfect casting ever. Yeah, it can fall into cliche traps, like the liar's reveal at one point, and sure, I don't find Darwin's monkey butler as funny as everyone else does. But this is still a terrific co-production between Sony Animation and Aardman. Number 2. Arthur Christmas. In this film, which is a collaboration with British animation studio Aardman, Santa is a traditional role passed down from generation to generation. The current Santa, Malcolm, is obviously getting too tired and old for his job. His eldest son, Stephen, is clearly a good choice for his replacement, thanks to his youthful energy, organising skills, and understanding of the new spacecraft travel for delivery missions. But Santa stubbornly refuses to step down, especially when his own father, Grand Santa, has just spent every Christmas watching missions from a TV all night. Meanwhile, Santa's younger son, Arthur, has found out that a present wasn't delivered this year, and he encourages Santa to get it to the little girl who asked for it. But Stephen insists that it's just too late. Grand Santa says that he'll help Arthur deliver the gift using the old magic sleigh as transport, and an elf called Bryony helps along to keep the present securely wrapped. Arthur Christmas is a film about accepting the changing times while not letting go of tradition entirely. A very relatable prospect for older audiences. It's quite heartbreaking watching Malcolm struggling to face retirement, knowing how attached he is to the job.
This figurehead thingy. I'm not just a fatty with a suit, am I?
The film also addresses the flaws of both magic and technology instead of vouching for one generation's take on Santa over the other, and encourages the idea that a middle ground needs to be met. The movie comes to the mature conclusion that while magic is whimsically enchanting, it's not best suited for the current times. And even though technology might be great for practical organizing, it needs to be helmed by someone who has the spirit of Santa. That love of children and passion for Christmas in general, something that Steve lacks.
No hablo español. Will you get? No, please don't cry.
Making Arthur the perfect candidate, a cheery and chipper man with an adorable enthusiasm for the festive season, who appreciates the charms of old traditions, but also respects the advancements of Steve's technology. Arthur's determination to deliver this present, just to make one little girl as happy as the rest of the world's children, is so precious and wholesome. Plus, the fact that he doesn't care about the Santa position and just wants to support his family shows how loving and humble he is too. I really adore Arthur Christmas. It has the always hilarious, dry-witted humour we expect from Aardman.
Arthur and Grand Santa are out there probably not wearing nearly enough layers, and you two are bickering over a big red toy?
A terrific lesson on facing the end of a career, and a lovely title character who steals my heart every time. Now, you may be wondering, what could top such a great film like Arthur Christmas? Well, you're about to find out. Number 1. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. Teenager Miles is lacking a direction in life, even failing his grades on purpose at boarding school despite being exceptionally bright, all because he misses his old public school. But all that changes when he's bitten by a radioactive spider and witnesses the murder of Peter Parker by the Kingpin. Miles must now adapt to his new Spidey powers so that he can shut down a dangerous super collider being charged up by the Kingpin. But Miles won't be alone, as a bunch of spider-powered superheroes from other universes have ended up in his world. However, Miles has to question if he's up for this responsibility, or will he be too scared to take on the challenge. Into the Spiderverse is something that really rocks the world of animation, a Spider-Man movie that could only be told using this specific medium, with its unique comic book graphics, hip graffiti aesthetics, varied character art styles, and psychedelic visuals. It proves that animation can be anything, it can do anything, and it has no limits. But it's not just all eye-candy spectacle, it's also a powerful story of how our loved ones are the people who give us strength, with their genuine support, realistic advice, and gentle kindness.
I see this spark in you, it's amazing, it's why I push you, but it's yours. Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great.
Into the Spiderverse is also a lesson in taking on a fear of failing a big responsibility or an overwhelming challenge. That no matter how scary something must seem, you just have to take a leap of faith, let go of your worst worries and embrace the obstacle that's blocking your journey forward. The more you think about it and let it stress you, the more you'll struggle to fight on.
When will I know I'm ready?
You won't. It's a leap of faith. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Spider-Verse shakes up the superhero movie dynamic too, by giving us a sympathetic human reason why Kingpin is charging the Collider. It also presents a badass version of Aunt May who is highly useful for both inventing gadgets and helping out in fighting combat. Plus, it sets up a possible potential romance that refreshingly ends up being a mature friendship. It's a film that also expanded audiences for animation, giving something relatable for teenagers to resonate with. Teens are an age demographic the modern Hollywood animation tends to blatantly ignore, assuming that they won't like a cartoon movie. But Into the Spider-Verse proves that you just need to tell them a story that speaks to them personally. Spiderverse lets us know that Sony Animation can take a huge risk, experiment with boundary-breaking ideas, and give us something daringly different. Something that emotionally and intellectually challenges their audience. It's amazing films like this that prevent me from excusing their less inspired or more shallow films, because Spiderverse is proof that they can do better, much better. I hope that Sony Animation keep this creative spirit up, I really do, and I wish the very best for their future projects. So, those were my choices for the top 5 best Sony Animation movies. I've been Jambareeqi and I hope that you enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to make. Feel free to leave your choices for the top 5 best and worst Sony Animation movies in the comment section below. Also, consider subscribing to my channel, where I produce a lot of videos about film and animation. So, what is my next top 5 best and worst video going to be on? Well, I think it's time for the Muppet movies. Cheerio, folks.